So recently I made a video talking about why Vietnam is great for digital nomads, and it seems like a lot of you were interested in that, so I figured today I would go over some of the best cities in Vietnam that I think are best for digital nomads. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first place that I think any digital nomad should consider if they're moving to Vietnam is Ho Chi Minh City. So Ho Chi Minh City is actually Vietnam's most populous city. Even though it's not the capital, and that's coming up a bit later, it is the largest, I would say, most metropolitan city in all of Vietnam. I would say some of the pros of Ho Chi Minh City is the fact that you will be able to network with a lot of different people. There are a lot of co-working spaces. Another pro that I will give Ho Chi Minh City is, since it is such a big city, there are multiple people from really all over the world that come and live and work in Ho Chi Minh. So you will find plenty of English speakers, and any of the amenities that you're used to in maybe your home country, you will find in Ho Chi Minh City. And considering that you're in Ho Chi Minh City, another pro is that they have an international airport, so you're not only able to fly anywhere pretty much within Vietnam from Ho Chi Minh City, you're also able to fly pretty much anywhere around the world. Ho Chi Minh City is also a very lively city and has a great nightlife, so if that's what you're into, then you will not be disappointed. Now, as far as the cons go with Ho Chi Minh City, I do feel like maybe it's a little bit too hectic for my liking. I know that the traffic is absolutely nuts, and personally I would never feel comfortable riding around in a moped or driving a moped myself in Ho Chi Minh City. And there's not as many good walking options in Ho Chi Minh, so I feel like you would need to be able to drive around or take a grab, and I think that that would personally be a little bit too much for me on a long-term basis. The other thing is the pollution is kind of bad in Ho Chi Minh just because of how big of the city is. So those are a couple of the things I would call a negative, but there are a lot of positives, and maybe it's the city for you. Moving on to the second most populated city in Vietnam and the capital of Vietnam, Hanoi. So Hanoi is an absolutely beautiful city. I would say some of the pros of Hanoi are it has a very unique culture to it. I feel like it has a lot better walking space in Hanoi versus Ho Chi Minh City. I do feel like the traffic is a bit turned down. It's not quite as bad as Ho Chi Minh City, but it's probably pretty close depending on the time of day or where you're living in Hanoi. The other great thing about Hanoi is they have a really good highway system up north, so you can get from Hanoi to Ha Long Bay in about 2.5 hours if you take the highway, and there's all kinds of places within that time frame that you could drive. They also have another international airport in Hanoi, so you can pretty much fly to anywhere that you would possibly want to be. Now, some of the cons of Hanoi are similar to the cons of Ho Chi Minh City. The air pollution is still pretty bad as far as that goes, considering you're just in a big city. It's just going to be part of it. And there are some cold winters and very, very humid summers, and that's kind of par for the course in Vietnam. You're always going to get really hot, humid summers, but most of Vietnam doesn't really experience winter the same way, well, I do, at least in the United States. So if you're not necessarily looking for a lot of different changes in the weather, then maybe it's not the place for you. I will also say that there's not as much of a thriving nightlife in Hanoi, so if you're more into the nightlife scene, then it's possibly not going to be the place that you would want to be a digital nomad. Now, moving on, another place that I think you should definitely consider if you're going to be a digital nomad in Vietnam is Da Nang. Da Nang is a place that isn't quite as big and busy as Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, but I do feel like there is a lot of infrastructure there. There's really good internet that will still be available to you. You also have a pretty awesome beach with a pretty good surf scene. So if you're a surfer, then it's probably going to be a really good spot for you. There is also a growing community of digital nomads that actually live and stay in Da Nang. So you're going to be able to plug in in to a new and up and coming scene. Now, as far as the cons go of Da Nang, well, it's not quite as big of a city as Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, so even though it's coming up with a lot of different networking, there's not as many networking possibilities or opportunities. Also, there is a chance of some flooding and some bad weather at certain times during the rainy season. They have some flooding issues in Da Nang, so I would personally be very cautious of where I choose, and I would make sure to do my homework on which areas have a tendency to flood over others. So those are just some things that maybe to consider, but overall Da Nang seems like a great place to stay. There's also an airport there. It's not international, but you could easily fly to one of the international airports if you needed to go somewhere. Another place that you may want to check out is Nha Trang. Like Da Nang, it has an absolutely beautiful beach scene. There's also a great nightlife in Nha Trang, and like Da Nang, it is starting to take off with some digital nomads, and you're getting some co-worker spaces there. Now, some of the cons of Nha Trang is that it is a very touristy place, especially touristy within Vietnam. So during peak seasons, it may absolutely be flooded with people and the beaches may be very busy. So that may be a major con. Another thing is that there isn't quite as many English speakers in Nha Trang as you would probably find in, well, definitely Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, but even Da Nang. So it's still maybe a little bit too niche for some people, but it is absolutely beautiful and I think a place worth considering. But those are just some of the places that I think would be great for digital nomads. Drop in the comment section below and let me know some of the places that I've missed. If you're considering being a digital nomad in Vietnam, let me know where you're leaning towards. If you've liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and until next time, peace.